Right, well, welcome everybody. Seems ages since we met. I think it was back in March when we had a relatively small group looking at the Climate Action Fund bid. And I think before that, Helen, you convened the meeting in January when I was away in Australia. So
I did.
You might want to, I don't know whether you can remember back that far, but is there anything you'd like to mention by way of a sort of recap and points that we might want to discuss today?
Well, the main discussions were around, I mean, we did a conversation around what everybody was up to, but also we discussed topic groups. And that's not really been taken any further since then. So whether people want to revisit that or not, or whether we're happy just having a group and we discuss amongst ourselves various things each time. But that was the only big thing that came out of that meeting, was deciding on whether we have topic groups and what the themes should be.
Yeah, I sort of suggested we might discuss that today, but again, we're quite a small group, which is disappointing to an extent, so we may need to just postpone that perhaps, or at least have an initial discussion about it. Yeah, okay. Well, as I said, I think I said in my reminder email, unless anyone's got any urgent topics they want to talk about today, I think it's a case of doing around the room sort of updates of developments, ideas, information, etc. Perhaps by way of starting, if I can just say that I mentioned the Climate Action Fund bid. We haven't heard anything back yet. I resubmitted it after the further discussion we had, I think. And if they were sticking to the published schedule, we should have had a feedback on the first stage of that sometime last week. So I do know, I think they said when I submitted it that they'd had a lot of applications, and it may well be it's taking longer for them to consider things. So not much to report on, well, nothing to report on that really, I'm afraid. So we just need to wait and see where we get with that. I'll say a bit more about a few updates from me perhaps at the end, but I'll sort of hand it over to each of you initially, if that's all right. And I'll just go around in terms of where you're appearing on my screen. So Helen, it's back to you to start with. Anything by way of developments or updates?
So I've got a project that I'm trying to get off the ground and find some funding for. Nigel knows about it, and some of you may or may not, but I've always had a bit of an idea to create, and it fits in with some of the work that we're doing with the nature community, Norfolk Community Nature Forum. And that is, I'd like to find some funding to fund a project to support and create new volunteer groups across the two districts. And they'll be very localized, like parish or town based groups. I'm aware there's existing groups out there, so it's really about going and finding out if they have any needs or for support or training to help them to grow and carry on with what they're doing, and to maybe help them with increasing their numbers. But also in parishes, there's probably people that are very interested in their local green spaces but don't know how to get involved. So it'd be about creating new local groups that of people, like-minded people, can come along. And I would be looking at the TCV potentially delivering it on our behalf, because it's their bread and butter doing this sort of work. And they would go out into communities and find out if there's interest to set up a group and help them to set up, support them, provide them with training, and eventually lead them to their own devices with just the ad hoc support as and when they need it going forward. So yeah, that's a project I'm looking at trying to get some funding for at the moment, and I think it feeds quite nicely into some of the stuff that we were trying to achieve through this group.
Yeah, if I can say just quickly, I mean, it fits really well with the model for community-led nature and recovery that we've developed here, particularly those first stages of engaging and inspiring local communities and giving them the initial support to start things off. And I think if the CAF bid doesn't come off, then I think what you're talking about, Helen, and maybe other opportunities for funding, we ought to be looking at those in order to move that model forward in some way.
Yeah, and if the CAF bid is successful, it feeds in nicely, because there's a project sort of role officer, there's a sort of an element of a staff member in that one, isn't there, that could maybe help with the overseeing of this project anyway. So I I'm sort of trying to work out where I get my funding from. I'm having a meeting in about a week and a half's time with the people at the council that are linked to within the council. We have the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it's part of the Integrated Care Board, but they sit within they kind of straddle lots of different, they're based at county, they also sit at our council offices, they also, so they kind of have that overarching sort of brief of coordinating stuff. And I'm aware that they've got a pot of money to deliver health and wellbeing. And I see this sort of volunteer project being very much sort of, we can sell it on the health and wellbeing agenda because it encourages people to get out, to get active, also for social isolation and all that, kind of ticks all those boxes. So they said they have a pot of money. I just don't know how big that pot of money is, but it basically is tapping into the NHS money to deliver this project. So watch this space. Yeah. I was hoping I might be able to do it through the Shared Prosperity Fund, but my ask is way beyond their budget. I think I would probably take up the whole lot of the money for 2 years if they funded it. So yeah, they're not as keen on funding it, but they might match fund. They might put some in as match funding, but they wouldn't fund the whole thing. So if anybody knows of any other pots that I could potentially apply to, I haven't gone down the lottery route. It's quite some of the bigger pots are quite onerous, and I haven't done that. But yes, feel free to send me any emails of any sort of funders that you think that would fit in quite nicely, or if your own organisations would like to be involved.
Pete, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, two things really. One is to say that the National Lottery Fund do have a smaller fund, so they do split it up. There's the big funds. I can't remember the titles they give it now. I was looking at this a couple of months ago, but they do have one which is a much more limited area. So it might be worthwhile actually having a chat with them to see if there's something that fits in. Or the other chap that's worth talking to is Graham Phillips up at Norfolk. He's what he doesn't know about funding opportunities is not worth knowing, and he's very good at helping people to put bids together.
Is he the guy is he the guy that ran that course, the funding course?
Yeah.
Oh, I know him. Yep.
Yeah, he knows a lot about potential sources of funds that are available, as well as how to put one together that's more likely to be successful. But I would still pursue the national lottery as well. I wouldn't just give up on them. And the other thing I was going to say that is if that does, if that project does get off the ground, then obviously we've got contacts and direct links into the parish and town. So by all means, come and talk to us about how to try and touch base with as many organisations as possible.
Yeah. Two comments. One is, as I mentioned to you yesterday, Helen, I did a couple of presentations for Vattenfall, one of the wind farm companies, recently, and interestingly, as you all possibly know, their community fund, I think, is not going to be available until next year, and the presentations and meetings I was at was very much about sowing some seeds in communities to get them thinking about ideas that they might want to put forward for funding. But interestingly, they have money available at the moment, which they're spending on the skills agenda. So developing green skills, I think, in a fairly broad sense as well. And it may well be the sort of thing that you described, Helen, as I said yesterday, could be, if you like, angled to them. If it's sort of presented and developed as a sort of an apprenticeship type opportunity, that could well meet their criteria. So hopefully you got my email with a suggested, I sent you the link, I think, didn't I, to them you can contact. The other thing, just to come back on what you said, Peter, you probably know that I'm doing a presentation at the Society of Local Council Clerks conference in Norwich shortly, and I'm going to use that as an opportunity to say more about the community-led nature recovery model, really with an angle on trying to get those clerks and possibly councillors more up to speed with what we're talking about, and getting them interested, if you like. So that fits, I think, with what you were saying about
Indeed, my boss will be there, and if they're short members, I may actually end up there, because I did last year. I ended up going
right
to help with that. Sorry, Nigel, if I could just pick up.
Yeah, you're fine.
Pick up on the wind farm thing as well. I was actually at a meeting yesterday with Equinor, and they are similarly going to have a community benefit fund, although given that they're not anticipating that their works are not going to start till 2026, so their fund won't be available until 2026 at the earliest. Although they do have funds that are associated with the original Sheringham Shoal field and the Dudgeon field that they are still paying out on, so it might be worthwhile approaching them. And of course Orsted are just about to kick off their community benefit funds. Again, they have an existing one that that you can currently apply for, which I think is called Hornsey, but that only applies for a sort of stretch of land that stretches from the Wash around as far as Wells, and about 10 or 15 kilometres inland from that. But the Hornsey 3, which is the one that they're just about to kick off with the new works that they've just started digging for, that actually goes all the way around the North Norfolk coast, round as far as Yarmouth, and it comes in about 10, 15, 20 kilometres inland. So they are open to applications for community-based projects in that area.
I've considered the Hornsey 3, but because I'd be looking at a 2 district-wide project, Hornsey 3, you can only deliver projects in their corridors. So it would become extremely complicated. There
are some geographical limitations, aren't there?
Yeah. But that would be, but it's one I am aware of if it comes to it. But I think I'm going to speak to the Vattenfall and just see if there is anything that it can tap into, and also the lottery, once I've spoken to the NHS people, to see what funds they've got available, and then from there, if it's something they're interested in, what I've got to find. I'm looking at a minimum 2-year project. I'd like it to be 3 years, but the sums I'm looking at about sort of just over 100,000.
Yeah. The other connection in health you might want to make is Claire Dyke. I don't know if you know her, but she's leading on social prescribing locally. I'll say a bit more about some projects that I'm involved with her. But you know, there is now a green social prescribing toolkit that's been published, and it's now available on the National Academy for Social Prescribing website, I understand. I haven't had a chance to look at it myself yet, but you know, there's another opportunity to angle things which are going to benefit people that will benefit from sort of connecting with nature in some way. Nige, you've been very patient. Over to you.
That's okay. I thought about this and then was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, because but it's a lady, I don't know if you know her, Angela Glynn, who she used to work, or maybe still does slightly, for the Hawke and Owl Trust as their fundraising officer, and she's really good. And I've noticed recently that she's become a freelancer. No idea what her rates are. She does a lot for charities and things like that, and is really into community stuff and conservation and naturey stuff. So
another possible source of advice and help. Okay.
So she's on LinkedIn. You can find her on there, but
thanks.
Worth a talk.
A
conversation.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments on what Helen said? If not, we'll move on. Giles, I think you're next in the panel.
Hi everyone. I was going to talk about.
I'll just say, I've made the assumption everyone knows everyone. Is that right? If not, we maybe just need to do some quick introductions. Amy, I'm not sure whether we've seen you before. Apologies if we have and I haven't recognised you.
Yes, you have seen me before, but I don't know everybody on the call.
Okay, well,
so maybe just a quick
intro, perhaps. Helen, just perhaps say what your role is.
I know Helen.
But... Yeah, we do know each other. But for those that don't know me, I deliver green infrastructure for South Northampton Council, so it's quite wide ranging.
Okay, Giles, over to you.
I'm Giles Merritt. I'm my job title is Regional Health Lead here for Natural England. So I'm looking at ways that we can help develop green social prescribing across the east of England. I cover 6 counties in the east, obviously including Norfolk. Updates from me. Well, I was going to talk about the nature prescriptions RSPB ICB joint effort, which Nigel and I attended a great meeting last week, didn't we, Nigel? So I'll leave you to talk about that one in more detail shortly, I'm sure. It was a really positive meeting out on Strumpshaw Fen, which was great fun. And I hadn't been there before, but it was a brilliant venue.
And we met face to face for the first time
Yeah,
in 2
it
years.
was great, wasn't it? Yes, after all this time, that was brilliant, really good. So apart from the train from Brundall, which wasn't moving, so it took me quite a while to get home. But anyway, that was all good fun. Yeah, naturally, I've been, I suppose, on a very general note, we've got quite a few national nature reserves, NNRs, across Norfolk, and I've been sort of pondering how we can use that resource to benefit people's health and well-being in better ways. I'm really after, if you have ideas, how we can link communities near to those NNRs better with what's there, and perhaps use them as venues for social prescribed, green social prescribing, or whatever. Obviously, as naturally, our reserve staff don't have the resource to deliver activities, but it could be somewhere for a third party, for example, to help communities access those spaces and learn more about them. So I'm thinking about places like Winsterton, where obviously there are facilities, which is always important. It reduces barriers for people, possibly Dersing and Bog, Hoveton, Great Broad, one or two others as well. So a very general point, really. If anyone has any ideas or thoughts on that, I'd be very interested to know more. It's just, we've got these wonderful resources, these nature reserves, and I always feel they're slightly underutilized. And you know, if there are ways we could benefit, use them to benefit people's health and well-being, that would be something I'd love to take forward. What else? Yeah, I suppose the only other thing is we've actually got a little bit of funding, which is great news. Unfortunately, it's not very much. So it's about 5,000 in the region. So I'd love to allocate some for Norfolk. And so if you've got any sort of small scale projects for startup that perhaps could demonstrate some form of sustainability longer term, or it could be just a scoping project to see what could be done when where, then we do have a little bit of funding. And if anyone wants any more information, then just let me know, because as I say, it'd be great to use what little funding we have in Norfolk.
Yeah, I mean, if I could come back straight away, and others may wish as well. You mentioned both, using your sites to greater effect,
yeah.
And also the funding. One of the things which you may be aware of is the First Nature campaign that we kicked off at the end of April, which is all about expanding nature connection opportunities for children and youngsters across Norfolk. One of the topics that's come up, but we haven't really explored it in any depth so far, is school visits to nature places. Perhaps principally about learning, but also hopefully about connecting, and I think there's a difference there. It's about, observing, using arts and other ways of interpreting nature and coming to understand it, if you like, in a slightly different way. And the issue really, I suppose, was prompted by one school who managed to make a visit to a farm near here, Booton Farm. Jeremy Buxton, you may know, and he is very keen to try and get some funding together for schools in order to fund visits like this. The example I mention is my local primary school, Corston, paid a visit to Corston Heath recently, literally I think 2 miles up the road, and it cost them £300 to hire a coach for the day. And it's not just the money, but it's also the organisation of these trips, having the staffing, sorting out health and safety and all that sort of stuff, which if we can find put a package of information and support together, which is partly finance, but, maybe other support, then maybe that could help. I don't know if that would fit the sort of thing you're talking about, Charles, but that's one idea. Yeah.
If we can incorporate a health and well-being element into that, all the better. But yeah, that certainly sounds the sorts of things we're looking for. As you say, transport is always one of the biggest barriers, I'm sure you all know.
Yeah,
and that's certainly something that we'd be able to fund. So perhaps a sort of a series of perhaps, I don't know, 6 or a dozen visits locally is the sort of thing we'd certainly be very happy to look at.
Or we can perhaps have further discussions. Other people.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, Helen.
Just something that we've done on one of our sites that we own, East Hills Woods in Cossey. and actually we're starting to do it at Queen's Hills now, is we had a guy come in, he's a independent sort of sole trader, he's called Wildside, and he comes in and he's made all our outside classrooms, and they're very basic, very straightforward, so if they're vandalized they're easy to put back together, they're not all fancy stuff. But he also does chainsaw carving, and some really good stuff, and he's where we've done lots of tree removal in the woods from like tree inspections, he'll come along and then just carve them, and there was ones that are designed for children to climb on, to investigate. And the change in attitude at East Hills Woods, and people now going there from outside the local area to visit it, because the kids just love it, because they can just go and find all these different carvings that are dotted around the woods. There's the outside classroom they could go and sit in. There's a big sort of circle of logs for them to sit in. So that might be something to think about on the nature reserve, to attract people to come. These just novelties that people go, oh, that's a bit different, and it's a bit more interesting for the kids' visits. They're not just walking along a footpath.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's something for them to go and find as they go. So if you want, I can share his details, but he's got a Facebook.
Yes,
That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, you just have a look at some of the work he's done. But he's put in a a space in the school at Queen's Hills, which is all like ponds and wildflower meadows and sensory gardens. But then we do stuff at Queen's Hills so the children can link the two sites together, so they can start it in the schools and they go out to the community park to carry on their learning. But yeah, it's just something that might make people go a bit more. And it doesn't mean you're destroying the habitat, you're just making use of the stuff that's laying around.
Yeah. That sounds
Great.
ideal. Thank you. You could share
anyone
that.
else any comments or questions for Giles? If not, thank you. I mean, would you like me to say a little bit about the nature prescriptions thing in a minute then, Giles, or did you want to say anything about that? Yeah,
yes,
okay, fine.
That would be great.
Yeah, fine, good. Charlotte, you're next. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Can't hear you very well. It's sort of distorted. There's a bit of an echo.
She's going to get a different one.
We'll move on and come back to you in a minute. Nige, over to you.
Hello. We haven't done a lot, really. Not a lot to report back on.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm
What
Nigel
do you do?
Sennett. I'm the Climate Change Project Officer for North Norfolk District Council. Was heavily involved with 110,000 trees. Well, it was me. I was the 110,000 tree person. But that's finished now. So yeah, so they're looking at a legacy project for that, which may include some woodland creation in North Norfolk somewhere, but it's just land. Getting the land is a bit of an issue. There was a project, some of you may remember, that I tried to get going in Fakenham about community green spaces, and sort of a training project to sort of ascertain and train communities to understand their green spaces, think about the skills that they have, and then sort of take it to the next step, which is then, okay, so we've got these skills, we've got this interest, we want to put in a wildflower meadow, we don't want to put in planters or anything like that, that's not what we're interested in. Or it might be, actually, we want a vegetable growing area, that's exactly what we want. And it was just coming up with the understanding for that, and giving them the tools to find out in their community what's best for them, before they then go and get funding and things, rather than us as the council going, oh yeah, we should put raised beds in this green space and you will enjoy that. And then they're not get used, and then us going, oh, why, that was a waste of money. That we haven't got funding for it yet, but Jenny Pedley, who was helping me from Edible East on that, she's resurrecting it slightly with a slightly different aspect in Fakenham. And I was hoping she'd be here to talk more about it, but she's not. But hopefully we'll be able to update you on the next one about that. But it's working with the libraries, as well as some of the other local community groups, and maybe doing a smaller scale scoping, not quite the training thing, but just a scoping project, just to see yeah, what communities might want, and then involving the community connectors at the council to kind of do that. So yeah, there's sort of that.
Kind of fits in. That's like an arm of the idea that I have as well, isn't it? You can see how they kind of would work quite well together.
Yeah, it was. I tried to get fun, and it's a problem we've had that I don't know whether you'd have the same sort of thing, Helen, but we have a sustainable communities fund, which communities can apply for, and it does a lot of great things, and I suppose rightly it can't be used to improve council assets. However, we want communities are now asking to take over their local spaces. So not Eastgate, Edgefield Parish Council have got some lovely green space.
Yeah.
Well, it's not lovely, it's mown to within an inch of its life, and it's got 2 swings on it, but that's it. So they
They've got
want to
big
take
ideas,
over
haven't
it.
they?
Yeah, they want to take over it. Yeah, I think they spoke to you, yeah. About it. Yeah, and wanted to, and one of our officers said, oh yeah, go to the community, a sustainable communities fund. They saw me on one of these webinars to ask me to go down and have a look, but then yeah, we can't fund it because it's an NDC site, and we won't do it through the sustainable communities fund, which is absolutely bonkers because it's exactly the type of project that we're looking for. So yeah, so that was annoying, but I don't know, Helen, if you have that problem in.
I'm not aware of it, but
No.
I've not got that far yet, so I'll keep that in mind as a possible. But I would be looking for the volunteers to also work on land that we already own, but it's also about communities identifying green spaces that are in their own communities that maybe the parish own, or that actually maybe nobody knows who owns them, but they'd like to do some with it. So it's kind of it could be a real mixture. I thought about whether, but I don't think we're going to get much funding from the council itself, so I don't think that would be a huge issue.
Yeah,
I suppose for me it begs the question about land ownership, and you know, is one option to, if it's a piece of land that the council no longer needs,
yeah,
why not transfer it to the parish, for example, if they're interested in taking it on,
well,
there
was that option, and it's sort of 2 halves of the site. One is the sort of the mown grass area, which I think the council would say yes, you can lease it for 10 years. The other side, I think at some point may have been identified for housing, but it's just a big meadow now. And sadly, I think because there's that possibility, the council want to hold on for it, so won't give the longer lease. They'll only do 5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
But then that stops the group applying for further funding to develop it if they can't go for the sustainable communities fund, because they need that security.
Can they register it as an asset of community value?
Oh.
Yeah.
And then that would potentially help prevent the development.
Yeah. Community ownership fund. It's one at the moment, isn't it? Which is around at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the other piece of news is a personal one, is that I'm leaving the council next month and joining Helen at Broadland to look after and help develop Broadland Country Park. So
just up the road. Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, really excited about that, and working with the communities there to sort of develop that. And again, kind of in my head, I see health and well-being, climate change, and biodiversity as sort of this Venn diagram, and that's, if I had a face mask, that's kind of all I see. It's just everywhere through these prisons, this Venn diagram. And so I definitely want the country park to be sat in the middle of that. And
brilliant.
Difficult job, I know, because everyone has their expectations and things, but that's the aim. So yeah, so when I'm next at this meeting, I'll be hopefully in my new job. So yeah,
Great. Couple of quick comments on what you said about North Norfolk and the legacy. I bumped into your colleague, Councillor Nigel, the other night at one of these Vattenfall presentations.
Which one?
What the one who was your environment lead, but he
Oh,
stood down,
Nigel
I think.
Lloyd.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
He
nice.
said he was missing you greatly, Nigel. He said you'd done fantastic work on the 110,000 trees, and he wished you well. So anyway, that. But I wonder whether you'd had, because do you remember when we? I think it was this meeting, but we had a meeting where we had Sheringham. It was one of the area gatherings, Sheringham Town Council along, and as you probably remember, they're very, I suppose, enthusiastic about taking a green approach, if you like, to their area. I just wondered whether, in terms of a legacy, they might be worth an approach. You know, Sarah at Town Clerk there, and so on.
Yeah. Was it Martin? I can't remember who.
Sarah Peverday.
Yeah, and there was a councillor.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. But yeah.
But with
You've got Sarah. Start with her. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in touch before. But the councillor that came along, parish councillor who came along, about an environmental strategy.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm due to meet with him soon, so we can discuss it then.
Good. Okay. Anyone any questions or comments for Nigel? Thanks, Nigel. That's very interesting. Back to you, Charlotte. Let's try again.
How does it sound now? Is that better?
Better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
You can understand
Fabulous.
you.
Yeah, that's helpful. So yeah, I'm Charlotte Collins. I'm the lead for Active Environments, Active Norfolk. I mean, primarily we're just an organisation that's about enabling people to move more. So yeah, if you want to know more about Active Environments, happy to talk about that another time. I suppose as an update, things that might be useful. At Sport England, where we get quite a lot of our funding, there's just been some active design guidance and sort of a revise of that. I think it's next week. Yeah, next week I've got a bit of a session, so I'll find out a little bit more detail about sort of what that means, and it may or may not be useful for some of you guys. I can share a bit more info when I know more. What we're also getting from Sport England is an indication that there'll be some funding that will be coming through the system for what they're calling place-based funding. Again, we don't know the full sort of details of that. It will be based on need. But yeah, as we know more, I'll let people know. Yeah, we're hopeful, and we can put together a good sort of reasoning for why we think Norfolk should get that funding. So yeah, there's that. There is also for Helen and others, there is a small grants program that closes end of this month. So if you want to put something in, you need to be quick about it. But I don't know the details of it too much, but I did have a quick look, and it does cover funding. It does cover training. So it might be worth a bit of a look. I'll put the link in the chat. And is there anything else that might be useful? I suppose there's just some sort of ongoing work around. So we work with the county council, where we're trying to develop a bit of insight around green infrastructure and physical activity. So bit of work that's happening in Greater Norwich, obviously, the work that Helen's involved in. But what we're trying to do is develop a bit of a data set for then Norfolk. So again, if you want to know a little bit more about it, then yeah, give us a shout.
Great. Anyone with any questions or comments? No. Thanks, Charlotte. That's really helpful. Pete, you're next in line, I think.
Yep. Okay. I've got my mic on. Pete Strange, I'm the Wellbeing Communications Engagement Manager for Norfolk Association of Local Councils. So we look after and represent all of the parish, town and town councils around the county, notwithstanding that they're not all necessarily members of our organisation. It's been a funny time because, of course, as lots of you will be aware, that the last couple of 3 months we've had parish elections. So that's obviously a time of massive flux in the parish and town council movement, and we've lost a lot of good people, I'm afraid, over that period of time. But hopefully we've onboarded a number of other good people who will take their place. Nonetheless, there are some quite significant holes around the parish and town network, lots of vacancies for parish and town councillors. So if anybody knows anybody who wants to get involved, that's a by the by. We continue our programme of webinars trying to connect the parish and towns into initiatives that are going on. Over the last period, we've had one on walking and cycling with some people from the cycling team at Norfolk County Council, and another one in the programme of general green spaces webinars from the green spaces team in Norfolk County Council, which was titled Outdoors for Everyone, but that was just highlighting a few projects around the county that people can get involved in. On a similar theme, I've actually got another webinar that's coming up in about 4 weeks' time with the Norfolk Youth Justice Board, which is where we're canvassing for, or they are canvassing for, parishes and towns to become involved in the reparations programme with young offenders who are on intervention programmes to try and keep them out. And obviously a subset of that is work on green spaces, whether they're public or private, around the parish and towns. So that might be something that leads to some interesting developments. And finally,
did you say the youth advisory boards, Pete?
It's the Norfolk Youth Justice Board, I think
Right.
They title themselves.
Yeah, I mean, just to say very quickly on that could be something that we're interested in on the First Nature campaign, because even though it's obviously focused on a particular subset of young people, nonetheless, it's an opportunity to engage them with nature, and hopefully in a positive way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to anticipate what Danny will say, but the purpose of a lot of these things is to intervene and change people's behaviour, and as part of that, I think that should be, if you can connect them with their communities, and the green community is part of that, then that's all to the good for everybody, really.
Yeah, good.
One final thing on a personal note, Helen might be interested in this. At the end of last year, I think it was Broadland, South Norfolk had a programme of handing out bare tree saplings to people. I certainly acquired one from a village over on the Broads, and I planted that, and I'm very pleased to say it's now 2 meters tall.
Oh,
so that's a mountain ash, so that's very healthy.
That was Kirsty's team that were doing that. Yeah.
I must admit, when I got it, I thought, oh, this is a bit spindly. It looks a bit unpromising. But I planted it out anyway, diligently kept it watered and in a sunny position. And lo and behold, as I said, it's nearly 2 meters.
Excellent. Well done, you. Better than my experience with one of our, was it the anniversary, the Queen's anniversary oak that we planted out near our churchyard? It didn't survive, unfortunately. No water anywhere. That's the problem.
Well, this is still in a pot at the moment, so I haven't actually tried transplanting it into the ground yet. So that's obviously going to be the next hurdle.
Right. Thank you, Pete. Anyone, any questions or comments for Pete? If not, over to you, Amy.
I don't know. I feel like I'm coming at things from a different side of the coin, because we're doing a lot of environmental projects that have a bit of community focus on it. So we're hoping to, I think I spoke to Helen before in a previous role about works at Caister Roman Town. Hopefully we're coming to delivery of that this year with and doing a little bit of signage. They're offering some new talks around the environment to people, because they offer free talks there. The Norfolk Archaeological Trust does. But I'm still hoping about scaling up works there to improve the stream and the connection and footpath connection to Poor England. I know that's a longer term aspiration. So I've been putting out feelers, because I think people are looking at the streams around there now, because they're being dried out with the drought and abstraction pressures. So we're talking to landowners, and I said, oh, if you could put a word in for me around river restoration or stream restoration, that'd be fabulous.
That'd be good.
With our Upper Bure Riverlands, with National Trust, which focuses on their estate at Felbrigg and Blickling, we did touch on social prescribing, because some of the members have an interest in it, and we thought we could get a list together of our offer, what National Trust could potentially offer people around those kind of activities. And it was also discussed about whether it should be a farm option, which I thought was an interesting thing, whether farmers should get involved and be able to offer some sort of social prescribing, green prescribing on their land. So yeah, I'm not sure how to influence that through elms. We'll see.
Well, there is.
Still-
Can I just say, there's obviously you're pretty aware there are already things called care farms that
Ah.
provide those opportunities. No, you're not aware of those.
No, it's not my
Ah.
interest. It was someone telling me about it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, in Norfolk, I think I'm pretty sure there must be at least half a dozen, if not more.
Oh.
Quite a few east of the city, in the sort of Broads area. 3 or 4 who are members of the network, Green Care Network, and you know their angle is very much about promoting health and well-being, but in a farm environment, as well as being a commercial farm as well.
Oh, if I could find out about that, if you've got any information or
Yeah,
who or
I
where,
can.
who to talk to, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I'll put you in touch. Giles got to go. Thanks for coming, Giles. I'll be in touch about future meeting and stuff like that, and be in touch about other things. You're on mute, but never mind. Cheers.
Bye.
Great to see you all. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay,
I can't
sorry,
be that
Doug,
much
interrupted
longer
you.
either. Final year of our Yare Valley work, which is the green infrastructure link around the south of the city between Balborough and Whitlingham. So now we're scoping to see what we'd like to do in the future phase of that project. I've been talking to Charlotte Rivet and Zoe Tebbett and Matt Davies at the Norwich City Council. And I think they're doing some work on green infrastructure and biodiversity, and I'm trying to understand how we can properly link up in the future to restore the river and offer that improved access to people. But I'm not quite sure about that yet. And finally, the last one is another scoping stage on the River Taz. There's quite a few social groups around there, but we're just trying to understand what the issues are from our point of view, and what the impacts are and what we'd like to do about it. And then I'm not sure what the next stage is. We need to get together as a steering group and figure that out.
Oh, can I just add, the Taz Valley is one of the GI corridors, green infrastructure corridors. So it's and it's on the Greater Norwich Growth Board's green infrastructure plan and other documents. So it's highlighted already as an important GI corridor. I'm really keen, so I'd be really interested in anything that comes out of that, or include me, please, because I'm really keen to use that as a connectivity corridor for wildlife and for people to get round from like the Florden Common, which is an SSSI, all the way through goes up to Dunstan Common, into Caister Roman Town, potentially up to Pineland. So there's that bigger corridor, and we use the UEA students to do some feasibility studies for us this year, and it's very basic, but they did a bit of a feasibility. One of them that they chose was one guy chose the Taz Valley, and it's quite basic, but he just highlights the barriers there, and in terms of getting people to walk, accessing that valley, and about getting across the river. So it is an area that I'm interested in. So if anything starts to take off, can you keep me informed? Because
I'll let you know the outputs of our current work, and then maybe if you have time, it'd be good if you could come to the meeting as well.
Yeah,
good.
Thank
Pete,
you.
over to you. You're on mute.
Must be very careful about not giving you background noises and just make those rookie mistakes. Sorry, Amy. I just wanted to come in on something you said earlier on, which was about streams drying up and maintaining flows and what have you. Wearing another hat, I sit on the Norfolk Strategic Flooding Alliance, and we've got a working group at the moment which is providing guidance to people who own or may think they own watercourses on what their rights and responsibilities are in terms of maintaining flow, and places where they can go to get advice on what they should and shouldn't be doing, and sort of technical help. So that's I was actually
Is that based on the Living on the Edge document that we used to have? We updated it recently.
It's sort of based on that, but with a Norfolk focus. And I know we do have a link, because I was just at a meeting this morning going through the detail of the new guidance we're producing, and there is a link within that back to your guidance, because I think you're just about to publish a new version of that, but it's designed for people in the county of Norfolk, and it gives them local local contact details, and we hope is a simple version of, you know, if you own the watercourse, this is what your responsibility is, this is how you do it.
Has someone looked at it from a wildlife point of view? If not, I'm happy to, because I know that previously a lot of people are recommending like just sending the flow through. This is going off on a tangent.
No.
We're not keen on that.
We're not looking at doing that. As much as anything, it's about trying to indicate to people that who isn't responsible, because one of the issues is that often watercourses, the ownership and ostensibly the responsibility for looking after the watercourse is not clear. So it's about trying to establish that and making sure that people understand who is, and then it refers people on to for example, your documents to what they actually technically would do. It doesn't go into the detail of, you know, this is how you dredge a channel. If it's so wide, you can do
not the D word. Don't mention that in my presence.
No, you know what I mean. We're not encouraging people to do that. It's about, but it's just for information of people around here, so that updated version, which is based both on your document and some work that's been done over in Cambridge, we're looking to publish, I think, around about September time, so that it's sort of ready for the rising waters and the sort of management season in the autumn.
Okay, anyone else, any questions or comments for Amy? Thank you, Amy. Charlie, last but not least.
Yes, hello everyone. Sorry, my camera isn't on. I always seem to have a problem with Zoom and my connection, so it's easier having it off. So I'm Charlie Blandy. I'm a public health officer at Norfolk County Council. One of my roles is looking at green space and the health benefits of green space and nature connectedness. So I was also at the meeting with Nigel and Giles and Strumpshaw Fen, which Nigel is going to talk about later. But my offer at that meeting to Claire and the team was building an evidence base around the benefits of green space and nature connectedness to health and well-being. And so I'm looking at both national and local research and data and demographic data, for example. And I think, so I'm currently building that up now. And I think what would be useful for people in this group as well is, I think with different projects are happening or different funding bids where you're trying to promote health and well-being, I think I'll have that evidence for you moving forward to try and put into that. And then my offer to Claire for the green social prescribing was to support the planning and designing of the evaluation as well. So something else we can look at if in different projects as well.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Any questions or comments? No. Okay, well, I'll canter through if I can. In terms of a few updates from me, the network continues. Green Care Network continues to host a number of what are called area gatherings, where we've basically divided up the county and encourage people for a particular area to get together online and so on. They've proved to be, I think, quite useful, though a bit like today, it's usually a handful of people that come along, but I think they get some real value of it. We also record those meetings and put them on our YouTube channel, so people, if they can't make it, you know, can view the meeting as I will do today. Other things I've mentioned, First Nature, the campaign to expand nature connection for children and youngsters. That was launched at an Earth Day fair that the network jointly hosted with my local church, Haveringland, on the 22nd of April. We had some fantastic presentations from youngsters and others already providing nature connection opportunities, like the Broads Authority, the Country Trust and others. And we're in the process at the moment now of developing our website. If you want to take a look at it, it's First Nature UK is the keyword, firstnatureuk.wordpress.com. It is a work in progress, but there's quite a lot of useful information on there about vision and aims, and a link through to the Bishop of Norwich award that we've now got for organisations or projects that are doing great work in this area, children and youngsters particularly, which is now live and which will hopefully be awarding the first one in the autumn. So that's going well. we're also in the process of producing some posters, which will be both online and hopefully hard copy, about the campaign, which we're aiming to get distributed around schools and other venues to get people on board and aware of, you know, the campaign and contributing to it. Starting to make contact with some organisations about what we might do, what they might do in terms of new opportunities. And I had a very initial conversation with the local head of the YMCA, who seemed quite keen on this area as well. Something I think they've been looking at locally, you know, expanding nature opportunities for youngsters and so on. So that's promising. Other things, I've mentioned the Climate Action Fund bid, so I don't need to repeat that. The other thing that we launched on the Earth Day Fair was a local community-led community-led nature recovery project, Living Landscape, centered on Havering Land. Our church, where we've got a conservation churchyard, which we've had for a number of years, and we're now starting to make contact. And Nige has done some great work initially to try and find local businesses, landowners, and so on, who we might connect with, to sort of take a landscape scale approach, as, you know, as we've talked about before in these meetings, but involving all elements of the community, not just farmers and landowners and businesses, but local local communities, parish councils, parish meetings, health service, whoever it might be, that's got a site that can contribute, if you like, to nature recovery. And as Nige said very, very eloquently earlier, you know, that Venn diagram comes to the fore all the time. It's about those overlapping possibilities that if people are involved in this sort of work, conservation activity at local level, they will get some health and well-being benefits from it. They will be doing something to mitigate climate change, probably, as well as, you know, biodiversity improvement. Amy, you're off. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you. Be in touch. What else? The green social prescribing thing, very interesting developments there. Claire Dyke from the health service locally is the local social prescribing lead, and she's latched on to the RSPB's work on nature prescriptions. The RSPB have run this project in Scotland and I think Derbyshire, and it's been really successful. It's been basically a diary or a calendar of things to look out for in nature that is given to people that are, you know, seen to be potentially benefiting from this. They go through the social prescribing route. They will have a discussion with a social prescribing link worker, and they'll be encouraged and supported to, you know, look out for nature on their doorsteps as much as anything. You know, look out for a particular bird or spot a particular flower or whatever it might be at a particular time of year. And Claire is, I think, committed to funding a Norfolk version of this, initially aimed at adults. And we're looking, I think, at the autumn for that to be ready for the design being done, but then training to be offered to social prescribing link workers to be able to offer it as part of their work. And I think there's also support for perhaps developing in due course a version for children and youngsters, again fitting in with the First Nature campaign. So that's a very promising development. The other NHS connection, which Charlotte will be aware of, is that we've both been involved with Mark Page at the NHS in putting together a research proposal, which is essentially, you come in if you think I've got it wrong, Charlotte, but essentially about reviewing how NHS providers, so those could be hospitals, primary care sites, ambulance stations, whatever, how they currently manage their green space, and exploring with them ways in which they might improve that from the point of view of biodiversity improvement, but also from the point of view of improving human health and well-being. That might be carers, service users, could be staff based at those sites as well. Now, again, if that's successful, then there's money there for a sort of, I think, quite a proactive research project that will hopefully lead to some proposals, if you like, or developments at these sites that will all, you know, will benefit in that sort of way: biodiversity improvement, health and well-being, and so on. Does that sound pretty accurate to you, Charlotte? Anything I've missed? Yeah, fine. Anything else?
You got runner up.
Sorry?
You got runner up.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm shamelessly showing. You can see it in the background there. Norfolk Biodiversity Awards. Norfolk Green Care Network was a runner-up in one of the categories. So there we are. I nominated us by ourselves, of course. So if you don't speak for yourself, you get nowhere. There we are. Shameless. What else? Yeah, all I wanted to finish off with was a recommendation for a couple of books that I've started to read. I don't know if you've come across this one, but this is really worth a read. Reconnection by Miles Richardson. Absolutely fabulous book. He's the guy up in Derby that's been leading the whole nature connection movement, you might say. It's full of fantastic research. And he does what we've been talking about. He talks about the overlapping nature of climate, biodiversity, and other environmental action in terms of the benefits it gives us, enabling us to connect with nature. And he talks about, how connecting with nature in an emotional and perhaps creative way, or a way that gives us meaning, can lead us to be much more caring and compassionate in the way we look after the world around us as well. So again, some really interesting stuff. And a much heavier one, which I haven't yet to start, but which I'm looking forward to reading. Isabella Tree, you probably heard of from the Knepp Estate in Sussex, great rewilding project, and her husband Charlie Burrell. This is very much, I think, a handbook or a Bible of how to develop nature recovery projects of various scales. It's got some fantastic material and references in it, which I'll be plumbing, I'm sure, in the next few months, because that's what it's going to take to read, I think. That's it from me. Anything you want to come back on? Questions or comments?
Can I ask you a quick question? You say you're putting together a website for the
First Nature, yeah.
I'm putting a funding bid together for something, and one of the things they want to put in is a website. How much roughly does it cost you to put a website together?
We've done it for free so far. We've got a volunteer, Harry, one of our volunteers, has very kindly been spending all her time doing it for us. And there is an option on WordPress, which I know because I've used it quite a lot, for a free, a free website. Effectively, they give you all sorts of different templates that you can use. And it's a reasonably easy, way of doing something yourself. I can't really comment in terms of what it might cost to, pay someone to set something up for you.
Okay.
Obviously, there are limitations on the free offer from WordPress, but it's actually quite good. You have adverts that are put on it, which you don't have any say in, but that's how they get their money back. But you've got the options of buying, a unique website address, domain, I think is the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
And other options which enable you to do without the adverts and things like that, but you obviously pay a fee for that.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Anything else? No. So I'm tempted to say there really isn't enough of us here to talk about subgroups. We are a subgroup in a sense, I think, aren't we? And I have to say it's slightly disappointing that we haven't got more people here. Now, I don't know what that is. Hopefully given enough notice of this, and I'm hoping that people are still interested in coming together periodically in the way that we talked about before. What do you feel about this? I mean, should we go for another meeting in a few months' time? I guess depending on the outcome of the Climate Action Fund bid, it may be helpful to meet perhaps sooner than that. But I'm open to suggestions. Really, what are your feelings?
I mean, if you're thinking about a couple of months taking into August, I would avoid August.
Yeah,
those
I was thinking actually September possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I think September. I'm happy to continue, even if it's on the basis of just like comparing notes and talking about projects and sharing information. It's useful.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to still carry on.
Thanks, Helen. Anyone
Yeah,
else?
same. I'll be in a different hat, but same. Yeah. And hopefully I can get somebody from NNDC to kind of carry on.
Pick up the mantle. Yeah.
But I don't know who that would be though, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm still happy to keep coming along. Are they replacing your position, Nige? Do you know? Are they recruiting?
Will be, yeah. Whether it'll, because yeah, it might change my emphasis a little bit because I was predominantly brought in to do the 110,000 trees project, and now I cover carbon footprinting and all sorts of stuff. So what they really need is an energy manager, more that type of role, I think, to get all their data and stuff, because internally they need to sort themselves out data wise. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. In an ideal world, there'll be several more of me, and we can start making a real difference.
Totally agree with that, Nige.
Yeah, you don't want that. But
The more Niges, the better, I think, really. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
okay, thank you. Charlotte or Charlie, any views?
I mean, I'd be happy to meet again in September. I suppose my only slight comment, I suppose, is whether or not for some people they might want something really specific, and therefore that might be the reason why they've not turned up, and where those kind of interest groups have come from.
Yeah.
For me, I find just the sort of round robin quite helpful, just to kind of catch up on what other people are doing. But I don't know if we did a little bit of a survey sort of gathering of some of that info last time. I can't remember like what people's particular interest was.
Helen, do you want to comment on that? Because I think you did when we had a chat about this. I think you said there were 2 or 3 ideas that came forward, weren't there?
Yeah, we made quite a long list which needs to be narrowed down, and I couldn't find my list, but I found it a little while ago, and now I'll have to go and look for it again, because obviously I'm in a meeting, but I know it's there. I know the list is there now. And what I'll do is I'll dig it out and I'll put it on an email to the whole group. These were the themes, but we all decided we do need to condense them down. It's how we condense them down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, by all means, do it yourself if you like, but I was going to do a quick follow up to today. I mean, I've got the recording, obviously, and I'll put the link onto that to people. But if you'd like me to include in that email, that list that you've got, I can say, look, we didn't get round to talking about this because there really weren't enough of us here, but here's a list. Maybe at our next meeting we can, as you suggested, narrow it down.
Yeah, I might be able to get it to you today, but I've got to go straight into another meeting after this one and go.
I'm no urgency.
But I'll try and get it to you next week if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm away from Tuesday, so if you could do it either tomorrow or Monday, that would be good. But no pressure.
Might try and do it this afternoon, because tomorrow I'm out all day on site.
Okay.
So and then the latest I'll get it to you is Monday.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, well, Charlie, any views on this at all?
I think similar to everyone else, really. I think it's been really useful for me, like today, just hearing what everyone's doing, all the different projects that are trying to get started. So I'm very happy to meet again September time.
Good, thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to be on holiday from the 8th to the 20th of September. So I guess, would it be wise to go towards the end of the month rather than the beginning? Because I think that first week of September, unless I'm wrong, let me see, 1st of September is a Friday. The bank holiday Monday is that week, probably the 28th of August, I would think.
Yeah.
So I'm available certainly some days the following week, the week beginning the 4th of September.
Yeah.
What do you think? Go for that one, or put it back to sort of towards the end of the month?
I think I think September onwards is fine, because not that it applies to me, but kids go back to school on around about the 3rd, 4th, don't they?
Yeah.
So some people will still be not doing might be a little bit all over the place until after I think around about the 4th or 5th of September.
Yeah, which is the Monday, Tuesday that week. Yeah, that might be a good point actually, to avoid that week for that reason. Yeah. You
have a lot of kids starting at high school and things like that. It's that transition stage where parents tend to be about a bit. Yeah. So just remembering back.
Yeah, indeed. How about then, just looking at my own diary, something like the Monday, the 25th?
Yeah. It's fine with me.
Again, similar sort of time. Timings, I know some people will be collecting children from school and so on. So if we said 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, most people head off for school runs around about, well, it depends where they live, I suppose.
Yeah.
School pickup is 3 o'clock, isn't it?
3 o'clock, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, yeah, whether we make it half an hour earlier so it's finished by 2:30. So it gives,
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, 1:30 to 2:30.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
fine
then
by
yeah,
me.
it frees it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Monday the 25th then, and I'll send a Zoom link out with that as well. And in the meantime, as I say, if we get any good news in terms of funding that's worth sharing, then obviously let's do that via email, and we may be helpful to sort of convene smaller groups of people around specific projects or funding opportunities that are coming through, perhaps.
Yeah.
Anything else wants to raise before we close?
No.
No. Great. Well, nice to see you all. Thanks very much for your attendance. I'll stop the recording in a minute, and to say I'll send around a follow-up email with a link, and other people can see it, and we'll see what reaction we get, if anything, to the ideas for continuing. All right.
Okay.